Hey, good morning and happy Wednesday morning. We are tracking Hurricane Francine, now upgraded to a hurricane that happened yesterday evening, right around or right before 7 o'clock. So we've got new updates on that hurricane today, and it is expected to make landfall today with many, many hazards. So we appreciate you jumping on here today. As always, put your comments, your questions in the comments section. Tell us where you're watching from. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox with Hail Trace, and we are here with our CEO. I'm sure a lot of you guys recognize him, a very familiar face, Derek Klein. Derek, I know that I want to jump right into it because we've got a lot to talk about, a lot of data to go through now that we are seeing landfall today as potentially category one, potentially category two Hurricane Francine.
Yeah, it definitely underwent some intensification last night. It was able to isolate out some of the dry air that had been really hurting its ability to strengthen and really organize, and so it kicked some of that out yesterday evening and became a hurricane, and then really quickly intensified up to a 90 mile per hour hurricane. So we had about 25 mile per hour of intensification that occurred in really about 12-hour period, or even a little bit less than that. So that would be considered rapid intensification. And so it went through that cycle, and it's since the pressure's still dropping, but the winds have not dropped or have not gone up any additional. But I do think there's definitely a likelihood that they could go up a little bit up to, like you said, potentially a category two by the time it makes landfall, which should be, I would say less. We're probably less than 12 hours now from landfall.
Yeah, and we've already seen some of the impacts of some of these outer bands along the coast, and I think we're going to continue to see those tornado impacts here, uh, storm surge as well. But before we get to that, I do want to mention you said yesterday if we could get that dry air out of here by about 10 o'clock midnight, we could see that rapid intensification. And I think that's exactly what happened. I mean, you hit the nail on the head here. So as we go into the next few hours, we've got many of those hazards. I think you have up here winds right now. Is that right? What do we
Yeah,
expect in the next few
yeah.
hours?
So this is the wind radii or the wind path from Francine so far, and you can see last night. You can see the direction that it's moving, right, with the especially with the red area, which is where the hurricane force winds are occurring at right now. So tropical storm and hurricane force winds still offshore from Louisiana, but they're moving pretty at a fairly decent pace. Probably, I would let's see. We can actually go look at the. We just had a new update come out just here recently, so we can take a look at that here to see. So yeah, moving to the northeast at 13 miles per hour, anticipated to kind of make a bend back to the north again as this trough of low pressure ejects off to the north and really just kind of leaves Francine behind. Whatever remnants are left of it as it moves up the Mississippi River Valley there, but yeah, at 10 a.m. winds still at 90, so they reached 90 in the middle of the night, and they've really leveled off for about the past 10 hours or so, stuck at 90. But the core is there, so if we switch over here to satellite, you can see just dense cloud cover right across the center. And a big change that we can see in the organizational structure. Remember yesterday we were talking about the dry air. We were also talking about some of that wind shear that was infringing on the southwest side. Well, we still have that. The hurricane has actually insulated itself to the southwest. So as it intensified, it created a little bit of a barrier from the southwest, and you can see that in this buzzsaw shape
Yeah.
on the south side. So it looks really, kind of classic-like. Now we don't have an eye, and I don't really see one popping out. In the I don't see one popping out inside of this satellite image right now. So sometimes you'll kind of see the eye start to clear out. But it doesn't look like that's happening. Now we still have, again, 8 to 10 hours or so until we have landfall. And so, there is a chance that could still happen as Francine tries to intensify. But here's your projected path. You've got hurricane warnings They did shave some of the hurricane warning off on the east side, so Lake Charles is now in the clear, at least for hurricane conditions. But the New Orleans area, you can see we've got a hurricane watch now around Lake Pontchartrain. And I would expect that New Orleans will see hurricane force winds with Francine as it comes on shore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we were just talking about the eye. You can't see it really on satellite. It's a little bit more clear on radar, at least, where you would expect an eye to be. But yeah, on satellite, you could kind of make out where you think that eye would be, but it's still not very clear.
Yeah, we'll switch over here to radar here. Let me switch my screen share here to a different product. We're going to take a look at, it's what we call GR Earth, is the name of this product here. So I'm going to switch it over. Let's see if I can get it.
And a lot of people, if you are weather enthusiasts like we are, GR Earth is kind of like GR2 analysis or GR3 analysis, which is what we use for a lot of our radar analysis here at Hail Trace. If you've ever watched our live forecast or our live weather coverage before, that's what we've been using. This is just kind of a different product. But yeah, you can see already, at least on that northeastern side, that formation of an eye is much more clear with radar.
Yeah, and obviously I've got a lot of data showing up on here. I'm going to try to break it down for you and really show you what it is that you're looking at here. So you can see this green and blue and at times yellow line with these little letters that are popping up. So that is the Hurricane Hunter aircraft that has been flying through the system. So that's him flying around, dropping these little points. And we can actually zoom in really close and see each location that he has actually dropped something. So I'm going to pause it, and I'm going to kind of break down the eye. So we're here in the eye of the system now. On their last pass, this is where the eye was, and they actually measured a few spots over here. I'm going to see if I can find them right in here. 971 millibars, which is definitely a decrease in pressure, and we're starting to kind of see this rapid thunderstorm band right here. You can see all the lightning in this. Big time sign of an intensifying hurricane when you get lightning in the eye wall. And this is our eye wall, but you can see it now trying to pull around, and we'll see if it. Well, I do think there's probably some rain has insulated this other side as well, but the radar's just struggling to pick it up from distance.
Yeah.
This looks like it's trying to wrap around, so you can really see it in the last several. See how it's really trying to close up, and looks a little bit more organized. And so we should have a new plane. So this plane that flew through recently has done its number of passes. It's got to go back to Biloxi to fill back up again, and we should have a new plane that'll take off here in the next few hours. But one thing about these dots, so each of these dots are colored by wind. So these are the surface winds. And so the yellow dots are locations where they're measuring hurricane force winds. So you can see here we've got 64 knots on this one. We've got 64 knots, which would be 75 mile per hour sustained winds on that location. And then over here on the east side, which is where all this thunderstorm activity was, you can see they're picking up a little bit stronger. So 70 knots, 73 knots, 73 knots. So closer to the 85, 90 mile per hour sustained. And you can expect gusts in those locations probably well over 100 miles an hour, probably in the 100 to 110 mile per hour range. So, the system is definitely active. You can see it moving here. I'll give it a loop. So we can kind of see how the eye's moving, and really just kind of following those lines there where the hurricane hunter's been dissecting and flying through. But really pay attention to the amount of lightning just in the last hour or two. The amount of lightning has just exploded inside of the eye wall of this hurricane, which could mean we're on our way to a Cat 2 hurricane here shortly.
Yeah, well, and we're not far from it now. Just kind of a reminder for everyone, Cat 1 hurricane is 74 to 95 mile per hour wind speeds. And if we get to that 96 mile per hour wind speed, we are in a Category 2 hurricane. So yeah, I think that's definitely possible, especially with the pressure dropping. If we could see the winds catch up to that, then I think that we could easily get into that category 2 range.
Yeah,
I think the pressure this morning, whenever I checked, was at like 976 or 977. So we have seen that go down a little bit.
for sure. Yeah, it's definitely gone down, and you can even see some of these. So some of these temperature spots are buoys or oil rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico. So, for example, this we'll see if we can pause it and get some real time examples here. So this one's taking on a pretty good hit here, and they are not measuring wind, so won't get anything from that one. Um, let's see here. So right here, this buoy is 70 knots, so about 80 to 85 mile per hour with gusts to 78 knots. So that these are measured south southwest at 57 knots. So this here we go. This is actually up here in the eye wall. 69 knots, gusting to 81 knots right now. In this East Cameron location. So we're getting some really good data. The track is honed in. It's going to make landfall really close here to what is this? Harry P. Memorial. So Morgan City. It's going to make landfall really close to Morgan City, in between Morgan City and Houma, Louisiana, and then should make its way up just across the east side of Lake Pontchartrain. Is where we should see the worst impact. So up over Hammond, Lutcher here. So just kind of just tracking right across that area.
And New Orleans, I can't see exactly on the map here. Point out where New Orleans is for us, and we could see those hurricane force winds in New Orleans. Okay, so New Orleans is. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
New Orleans is on the northeast side of as the storm comes in. So it's also not only could see those strong hurricane force winds, but it could also see the tornado risk as well. So that right front quadrant is where we're watching for the tornado potential today. That's on the northeast side of the storm. Not only today, but also overnight tonight, we could see the tornado potential stretch all the way out into the Florida Panhandle, and then even up to the north into Alabama and even parts of Georgia. So we've got a large area that's going to see impacts from this hurricane that is not just hurricane force winds or storm surge, but also that tornado risk as well.
Yeah, if I kind of look at, we'll kind of highlight maybe some of the key cities here in Louisiana, and talk about maybe more of the impacts that you'll see at each one of those. So Morgan City right here, really looking to take a direct hit from this hurricane. So I would expect sustained winds on the order of 75 to 85 miles per hour in Morgan City, probably 70 to 80, 75 to 80 is more likely. But wind gusts, we'll see wind gusts close to 110 miles an hour in Morgan City, which is plenty to do damage. Obviously, extreme flooding. There'll be storm surge, especially a little bit closer to the coast from Morgan City. You'll see water come up the rivers in Morgan City and overflow some of those rivers. So you have to watch the levees and things like that around the Morgan City area. Again, expect a high-end Category 1 or a low-end Category 2 to make really a direct hit to Morgan City. If we go back to the west a little bit, so we head up towards Lafayette, expect impacts to be a little bit less. They're going to be on the north and the west side of the hurricane. Still some heavy rain already ongoing in Lafayette. And the winds, though, not too bad. Variable at 6 knots. So they got 10 mile per hour winds right now in Lafayette. So it's not too bad, but it is going to get windier. I would expect to see some winds sustained in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range, the tropical storm force with some gusts possibly approaching 70 miles per hour in Lafayette. So, and again, probably somewhere on the order of 2 to 4 inches of rain. Probably can handle that in Lafayette, but probably expect some flood watches and warnings to be issued for that area as this comes in. And we didn't look at the current wind speed in Morgan City. They're not bad either, east at 9 knots. So right now the wind has not come on shore yet in Louisiana from this hurricane. It shows you how tight and compact it is. As we head up to the north and east, though, we get into the New Orleans area. We switch from the west side of the system to the east side of the system. So expect about 3 to 5 foot of water, maybe even 4 to 6 foot of water come into Lake Pontchartrain. So there will be some minor flooding from storm surge from that. Wind speed wise, I would expect winds to be sustained probably closer, depending on the side of town that you're on. You're going to see a pretty extreme wind change from Laplace, which is on the east or on the west side of New Orleans, versus downtown New Orleans, which again closer over to the Gulf of Mexico. Downtown New Orleans, I would expect winds to probably be 50 to 60 mile per hour sustained, with gusts in that 75 to 85 mile per hour range. But on the east side, don't be shocked if we see some 100 mile per hour gusts um, near Laplace and some of the suburbs on the eastern side of New Orleans. They're definitely going to take a pretty good hit. And then as you go a little bit further east, we start to get into the area that I think probably has the higher tornado threat. I think New Orleans, I'm just looking at where they're at right now with this large band of rain, really just kind of soaking in on the area. I think the tornado threat may be a little bit lower in New Orleans, but as we get up towards Gulfport, Pascagoula, Biloxi, Mobile, expect that tornado threat to go up. The wind speeds will go down. Gulfport probably in the order of 40 to maybe some wind gusts close to 60 in Gulfport. But the tornado threat's going to be a lot higher, and that's going to come from, as I shift over here to the east, that's going to come from these bands out here. So as these bands transition and pivot up and around the hurricane and come on shore, especially when they come on shore, it's crazy. It creates a little bit of friction, which can kind of, with that high speed, can really tends to make things kind of spin up a little bit. So we'll have to watch those bands as they come on shore, because that could really get things going.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that we talked about yesterday, if people missed our live yesterday, is that these tornadoes move very, very fast and they are spin up. That doesn't mean that they're small or they're weak, but spin up means they're very quick and they're hard to detect on radar sometimes, but they're even more difficult to detect in person because they're oftentimes rain wrapped. Rain wrapped tornadoes doesn't look like a tornado. It looks like a heavy downpour of rain. You've got to be very, very smart or a skilled meteorologist to recognize that that's a tornado. And that could be a big issue in these areas, that these things happen fast. You get pretty little warning with this as well. And they move really quickly as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, they're, I mean, 60 to 70 mile per hour motions, not uncommon with these type of tornadoes. So you don't get a lot of warning with them. So you definitely have to watch them very closely.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we want to get into other things like shear or water temperature as we approach the surface or the shore here. I know that was a concern about this kind of almost like capping out this hurricane as it approaches shore, because we've got some cooler waters just off the shoreline here. We've also got a little bit of shear as it approaches. Do you think that this storm is already sustained? We don't have to worry about that anymore, or do you think that that's something that we still need to watch over the next 10 to 12 hours here?
I mean, obviously, I think this what the shear and then maybe the slightly cooler water temperature will do is really put a lid or a cap on the amount of intensification that we're going to get out of this system. And we may already be seeing it. That may be why we saw the wind speeds not accelerate. In that, we went from 65 to 90 mile per hour winds. That's a 25-mile increase in a matter of 6 to 8 hours, and then it just stopped. And that could be due to that wind shear, playing a role. The National Hurricane Center has said that they've noticed that the core of the system is tilted or elongated just a little bit, from the southwest to the northeast because of that shear. So I think that is playing a role in the amount of intensification and the wind speeds that we're seeing out of the system. Doesn't mean that it won't intensify and we might get a 5 or 10 mile increase, but also doesn't mean that it won't it can definitely stay the same. And so we can see things not increase. And so I'm going to do a switch back here to a different viewpoint so we can show you kind of what that wind shear looks like inside of this system here. because we've got several different things that we can kind of highlight here. Let's see here. Make sure I get the right.
And while you're doing that, just for everyone who is not a weather enthusiast like we are, high wind shear, not great for a hurricane. Low wind shear, great for intensification. So whenever you hear Derek talk about high wind shear, that means that it's not great for that hurricane intensification. Low wind shear means that that hurricane can intensify, can get stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you can actually see it here. So now some of this wind shear is just because of the increase in speed here. But yesterday, Francine was over the greens and the blues, and now it's kind of moving up into the red area. Now, while the blue dotted lines indicate that the amount of shear has decreased across this area, it is still there. So we still do have some wind shear, or a decent amount of wind shear in the area. Not enough to kill the hurricane, but definitely enough to put a lid on it, just to keep it from getting too crazy. Same if we go back here and look at the water temperatures. You can see here, water temperatures are warm, but there's this little yellow pool right up here that Francine will move over. I think that area is probably small enough that it won't have an impact on the hurricane. So it's really the shear. I think that's the limiting factor. And we can see that on satellite here. If I switch over to our visible satellite, while you can see that the hurricane has insulated itself. It's got the banding and kind of that outflow on the southwest side. It's still nothing compared to the outflow that it has off to the north and west, streaming across Louisiana into Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. Everything to the south and west is really confined back quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. You can see that. And this looks so much more like a hurricane today than it did yesterday. This looks like so much better structure today than it did yesterday. So I think that's pretty impressive. We've got about 8 more minutes here. If anyone on the chat or anyone who's watching live has any questions, stick that in the chat and let us know if you do have any questions. We've only got a few more minutes here with Derek before we wrap up. And then we'll do another live like this afternoon, right around 4 o'clock, right around landfall this afternoon.
Yeah, so looking at this is the discussion again. This came out while we started this live. Hopefully the Southwest flight attendant or onboarding rep here, I'm sure you guys can hear her. Hopefully she doesn't have to say. Some say more than others. I don't know if you've ever been on a Southwest flight before. Some are
chatting. They sing a lot. Yeah, for everyone who doesn't know, Derek is in the airport right now. So he's taking time out of his day to be here with us and forecast, do this live with us. So we appreciate it.
Oh yeah, well, us weather nerds, we can't get enough of it. So we've got to talk about it if it's there. So, so some of this stuff that they're kind of talking about and discussing here is they basically break it down into path and then to due to intensity. So, here they say due to increasing wind shear and the possibility that drier air will wrap around the south side of the center, little change in strength is expected before landfall. However, Francine will continue to pose a significant risk of life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds, and locations in the warning areas. Once inland, Francine is expected to weaken quickly. So, their forecast is for Francine to stay basically about the same. And I'm definitely not disagreeing with that. I do think it's possible that it could go up a little bit in intensity. And really, my main thinking for that is really more of a now forecast with the amount of lightning and this band over here to the right. But here's that dry air that they're talking about too. That's why we have this lack of precipitation here. And if that gets entrained into the system, well, that's the end of it. So we definitely won't see any intensification with that dry air in place. So we'll have to watch to see if this band wins out or if this dry air wins out for the next couple of hours as Francine makes her approach to the Louisiana coast. But could go either way with that. And I think I was talking about it, and you weren't seeing the radar that I was talking about. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were looking at the discussion.
Yeah. So, but there is some dry air on radar here, and I'm going to show you the warnings here, the inland warnings as well, just to kind of give a breakdown of what this looks like here. Let's see if they have any. That's all their safety stuff. But so you can see the bright pink here all the way up through Baton Rouge. Doesn't quite go to New Orleans. Does go over here to La Place. These purple counties are also, I believe, under hurricane warnings. No, nope, they're under hurricane watch. So the hurricane watch kind of goes around the outskirts here. Wouldn't be surprised, depending on where landfall is, if they do upgrade those to hurricane warnings. Um, but right now, hurricane watch is for New Orleans. So
Yeah,
that's what.
especially those eastern counties, because as this continues to kind of take that northeast or east track, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they upgrade those eastern counties either.
Yeah, and you can kind of start to see here on the satellite. So you can see these bright white tops coming from the north side, around the back side, and then down to the south side. But then you can almost see this clear air right here, like this triangle, this wedge. That's that dry air. So again, that's coming from the wind shear. It's coming from the tilt. If that expands anymore, and it's pretty close right now, honestly, looking out of that satellite to going ahead and saying, all right, we're done intensifying with Francine, so we're going to cruise in at a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane. And none of all this stuff has been forecasted, right? We've been talking about it intensifying up to a hurricane, encountering the shear as it approached the coast, but be cautious. It's a Gulf of Mexico hurricane. Sometimes they do things we don't think is possible. And so far, Francine has not done the things that we don't think is possible, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. As this comes on shore today, I think a lot of people are, hoping for that dry air, but that's still something to watch for because as you mentioned, Gulf of Mexico can do some funky things and it can surprise you sometimes. That's probably why the National Hurricane Center has, already well in advance issued those hurricane warnings and even watches and warnings all the way up inland into Mississippi as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, um, yeah, so I think that's really it right now with Francine. It's a healthy Category 1 hurricane, and it'll make landfall as a healthy Category 1 hurricane. Um, you know, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about hurricane versus just a steady hurricane. There's actually a difference in the amount of impact an intensifying hurricane would have over a weakening or just a steady hurricane. So if Francine is done intensifying, that'll also be good. It'll keep the amount of high end gusts down. So we'll see if that trend continues with it being kind of steady, holding par with itself. But that can also help keep some of the wind damage down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Derek, we appreciate you jumping on here today and taking time out of your travel day to jump on here. Yeah, we can wrap up here and then we will have another forecast at noon for everyone watching. We do a live noon forecast every weekday, so we want you to jump on and join that as well. We'll be breaking down the tornado threat and any updates that we have on Francine over the next hour and a half here. And then we'll do another forecast, another live, very similar to this right here, this afternoon as Francine makes landfall. So we hope that you'll jump on for that as well.
Sounds
All righty,
good.
thanks. Yeah, thanks for jumping on today. I hope that you have great travels throughout the next few hours, and we'll catch up with